Hello and welcome to the Clashing of Steel. And today we have an update 2.3 recap. So there are a few changes and a lot of bug fixes. Probably the biggest changes are the improved scoreboard. We can now see it as a overall score, not just the kills. They have broken it down into 4 categories: how we earn score, aggression, defense, support and capture. All of these things are pretty straightforward, but the support is aiding teammates and capture is decapping and capturing yourself. At the same time, the defense is, like for example, the spear forms. And another great change is commander power limitation, meaning if you play with tier 1s, you can't use your commander's tier 3 and tier 5 abilities. Although the upgrades still remain. For example, you are tier 10 playing Germanicus and have infantry charge. All the upgrades will remain if you go to tier 1, you just won't be able to use tier 3 and tier 5 abilities, the Studo and Vengeance. It was made so that new players can fight against more decent enemies, so that on tier 1 you just couldn't charge in and pop Vengeance and wreck them. Another interesting thing is the improved end screen. It now shows the amount of decorations earned by the player in that battle. Shows separately how much damage have player units done to different enemies, and some visual changes as well. So now to the biggest changes, or the most important ones: balancing and content changes. So first of all, Greek Shock Cavalry. It was too weak and its charge has been increased to be more viable. I can understand that, seeing as they're the only cavalry that does not have shields, are not good in melee, but the only thing they have is practically charge. Although their charges sometimes seem to work and other times didn't seem to work at all, perhaps this will increase their viability in flanking or perhaps even going head on. So another small change for the Miltiades and the Hashidati. They also got some damage increase because they were somewhat weak when playing with Commander Miltiades. Some changes to the Roman Javelins as well. They used to have the ability called Strain, which increased their range. It has been replaced with Hurl, which gives even more range because it didn't feel to be efficient enough. Another welcome change for the newcomers is Tips, that will show up or pop up after you press the matchmaking button or the play button, I guess. Also a small change to the lobby chat. Players will now try to be set by the region and language they are in. That way putting Russians into, Russian for example, Russian chat lobbies, and European for example, the Polish, the German, so on. Couple of UI changes as well, probably the biggest being disconnected player. Now the opposing team cannot see if a player is disconnected. You can see it in your own team, but the opponents can't see it. Also, if a player chooses its location on the starting map, where we pick our locations, and DCs afterwards, that location is emptied up and that DC player's units will spawn on an empty location. And now to the longest list, the bug fixes. I ain't gonna cover all of these, I'm just gonna see what are the most important ones, or the ones that I personally would like to know about. There are a lot of crash fixes, some movement fixes it seems. Okay, for example, another great one is charge through friendly units will no longer cancel the allied player's movement order. Meaning that whenever or whatever reason your teammate charged through you or into you, your unit's orders will now still remain the same. Another interesting one is that the stationary sub squad will no longer charge when the main body of the squad charges. I'm guessing it's practically when your unit is spread out, like the main force is in one area and then there are like 4 guys behind it who are just trying to catch up, who are not yet part of the main force. So if the main force charges, those 4 guys or guys behind it will try to run towards the main unit and won't charge. Another great fix is that toggleable abilities will no longer end your given command. For example, Commander Sulla's Proscription, if you activated it, it would automatically stop your unit. So another interesting buff and debuff abilities now stay active for the full duration if applied to a unit. I'm guessing there was a bug or a problem with that it didn't activate or it deactivated too soon perhaps. Anyways, it has been fixed. Well, here's an interesting change for the artillery. Repairability can now be used on partially damaged artillery, meaning that you can repair your artillery if it is already somewhat damaged. You can also no longer activate consumable ammunition when disassembling artillery, can no longer manually aim when disassembling and repairing artillery. Another fix for the artillery, where the artillery was not able to turn, it should now be fixed, and artillery should be a lot less aggravating at this point. Right now, the artillery projectile should no longer vanish midair as well. I haven't had that problem personally, but it's great to hear that they fixed it. And these were it for the artillery. So another great change is for the barbarian cavalry, or perhaps more precisely for Vercingetorix. The Scorched Earth can now be drawn behind the cavalry. I actually had a problem with this the other day. I tried to throw Scorched Earth behind me, but I couldn't, so I had to turn my unit around. Some formed combat fixes as well. Formed combat will now attack and do damage to routing units. Also improved formed combat behavior when units in pike phalanx move backwards. And another great thing for Scorched Earth, they should no longer throw javelins. Let's hope so. It has happened so many times. And also the Flaming Throw should now throw flaming projectiles. Also something that Greece players might want to know, Phalanx/Spear Wall now has collision with destructible objects. Meaning that if there are some objects that you can walk over, like the tents in your base, I'm guessing they can now block your spreading out. Another great change that often happened to my Roman swordsmen is that throw Pila. After throwing it, they will no longer reform few steps backward. Actually, I don't think they even reformed few steps backward. I think they just reformed either in a weird direction or somehow. Let's just hope it fixes that as well. And another interesting pathfinding fix. Giving unit a movement order while walking around the corner will now keep them in formation, meaning that units could spread out or perhaps even narrow into each other and sneak past tight locations. I think I have seen some players pull out pretty incredible flanking maneuvers while just walking around a small corner while there's a fight going on the line. That way being able to flank the opponents. Just using a small corner to push through and incredibly flank us. And here's another interesting one. If all players on the winning team quit the battle, they will no longer get a victory. So basically, if you're in the end up against the NPCs, you will win. Another fix for the formed combat tooltip. The knockbacks no longer do damage. It has been with us for a while. They haven't done damage for I think 2, maybe even 3 weeks. Just mentioning it out to players who did not know that. So these were most of the changes and fixes. There's actually a long list of overall changes. I'm gonna link it in the description below, but these were just the major ones and the ones that affected the gameplay mostly. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe and thanks for watching.